Go ahead, Chairman.
Okay, I would like to call to order the Architectural Review Board regular meeting on Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. Madam Clerk, can you roll call, please?
Larson?
Here.
Howlett? Schneider?
Here.
Moran? Barden?
Here. Okay. Thank you very much. Next order on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 3 on our agenda is citizens' time. If anyone or any member of the public would like to speak on an item on this agenda, feel free to come and address the committee. Seeing none, we will move to minute approval. We have on our agenda approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 15th, 2023. Before we make a motion, any comments on the minutes? Okay. That being said, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Motion's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the item? None? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 There are none. And 2 ARB members absent for the vote. Okay. Next up, agenda items, of which we have 4. First is demolition permit application for 6712 Jefferson Street. I believe Emily will be presenting the item for this evening. We also have the applicant's representative here as well. So Emily, if you can get us started.
Absolutely. So we're on packet page 5 of the agenda for this application. Here on packet page 5, you will find my report for the demolition application. I go through the typical standard report that we prepare and the details. So what I have done is I have called to attention one of our first boxes of the report on the bottom of page 5 onto the top of page 6. I have put in here the verbiage off of the Virginia Department of Historic Resources report that was filed. So I have added that here in the italicized font. Basically, this is stating and giving some reference to the property there on Jefferson Street. For those of you not familiar with the property, it is at 6712 Jefferson, which sits on the corner of Payne and Jefferson. The house that we're talking about tonight is the 1940s era house that fronts on Jefferson. Most of the time, during the spring, summer, and fall months, it is pretty screened with some vegetation there in the front and the side. So at quick drive-by, you might not see it each time, but it is right there on that corner. The other house was built in the 1980s and is not part of this discussion for tonight. If you flip forward to packet page 8 through 13, through 14, you will see the Old and Historic Haymarket District overlay section of our zoning ordinance. This is for your reference here, and we later are discussing what this entails when it comes to the demolition. This is for you to refer back to section 58-16.12 specifically, which is on page 13 when considering the demolition application. So with that, I've gone through a general discussion here. So one of the items that we as the board need to look at, or you as the board need to look at, is the demolition or removal of a historic resource from the property on which it is located and how it will impact the historic integrity of the site and any remaining on-site historic resources. Right now, this structure is the only historic resource recognized on the site. It is recognized locally historic, that is within the town of Haymarket contributing resources list. It is not recognized at the state level or at the federal level. Again, that Virginia Department of Historic Resources report outlines that, and that was at the beginning of the report, that language. If this structure is demolished, it will be removing a example of 1940s residential architecture. This structure currently, an opinion would be that it has not been upkept very well over the years, and therefore it is not necessarily an excellent example of 1940s residential architecture. Again, it's not listed state or federally. The loss of this historic resource and how it will impact the historic integrity of any adjacent historic property. In that vicinity, you have kind of diagonally across the street, across Jefferson Street, is the Masonic Lodge. That is a historic resource as well. Just up the street from that, pretty much on the same property, is the bungalow structure. That address is 6707 Jefferson Street. That is one that has been approved for demolition and will probably be taken down here very soon. Beyond that, you do have the old bank building at the intersection and the firehouse, but again, those are further up the street from this property. To the south of this property along Jefferson Street, you have some older homes that were built on Jefferson Street on the east side, and those are some that are tucked back in there. They have larger front lawns, so they sit back behind some older vegetation. And then further down the street, you do have what we consider, or what we refer to as the 18th century neighborhood. It is one that was in the early 2000s timeframe is when those homes were built. So next item, the impact of the loss of the historic resource on the overall integrity of the historic district. Again, you know, the demolition of this structure would deplete one of our local historic resources that we recognize in our comprehensive plan. The ability of the historic resource to be adaptively reused as part of a new on-site development, which would not adversely impact the historic resource's ability to convey its historic significance through its integrity of location, setting, feeling, association, design, materials, and workmanship. This one is a bit trickier of an answer in a discussion. As you look at the inspection report, as you do a site visit, as you take into consideration the current status of the building and the maintenance that has or has not happened, what you may find is that the significant need for repairs and rehabilitation will ultimately leave very little of the original structure standing and will ultimately modify a very large percentage of it. At which point I think it needs to come into consideration, is it financially feasible to look into this as an option? Are you ending up replacing more of the building than you're saving for its historic resource, its historic significance? And then one of the other items that we look at are whether any monies or assistance for preservation is available. At this time, the town does not have any grant funding available for our local historic resource structures. This would require further discussion by council if that is something that the ARB wishes to discuss. So at this time, I do want to invite up Michelle Rosati, the representative for this application, so that we can hear directly from her and have a discussion on the materials that she has supplied. So if you jump forward to packet page 21, you will be at the narrative that was submitted. There are other documents here to follow, to include a report that was done by a previous staff member, Samantha Lewis, who was one of our assistant town planners at the time. And then also there are photos. I have included these photos from a previous report that was done at the house and presented to the ARB, and those start on packet page 48. And it is photographs of the interior of the structure. So Michelle, if you want to come up.
mic, don't I?
There you go. You're on now.
Is that better?
Yeah. Thank you.
I am a zoning attorney with Holland and Knight, and I represent Stephen and Melody Bean, who are the owners of 6712 Jefferson Street. As was just described to you, there are two residential structures on a single lot at 6712 Jefferson Street. The house that's the subject of this request for permission to demolish is the 1940s era house that fronts on Jefferson. The other house was built in the late 1980s. So I do just want to start with talking about what this house is and sort of what its historic importance is. It was built in the 1940s. It's been referred to in some of the town documents as the Baker Bean House. I understand the Bakers were a historically prominent, significant family in Haymarket. There does not seem to be any substance to that name. The Baker family's not had any discernible connection with the house. There's really nothing historic about it in the sense that any important person or event happened in the house. It's considered a contributing resource at the town level just because it's a 1940s house. I know that there are not a lot of them left because of fires that have happened historically in the town, but there's not some other sort of historic significance to the structure but that. The Virginia Department of Historic Resources has looked at this house a couple of times. The last time was in 2012. And I think that they had also looked at it, I believe, in 2004. At both of those times, VDHR said that the house was not eligible for listing. The house in 2012 was described by VDHR as being typical of mid-20th century in Prince William County, no association with important people or events, the design and workmanship are undistinguished in the materials stock. So basically, it was just sort of an ordinary house that was built economically in the 1940s by the family that built it. And the relic report that Ms. Karazzi referred to that was prepared didn't really find any other historic associations. So, you know, is it considered a contributing resource? Yes, I understand and do not mean to downplay that that's an important policy issue in the town and that you shouldn't let go of every structure in the town lightly because it's only a contributing resource. I mean, we get that those are important. However, this house is in really bad shape. And, you know, I would sort of focus maybe a little bit differently than staff did. Apparently in the 1970s, when sewer was put in down that road, they blasted to do it. There was a lot of rock. And it appears that the foundation was damaged at the time. Maybe that wasn't really noticed at the time. I think Mayor Bean was living in the house at the time and her other family wasn't around. But that cracking to the foundation is significant. As you see in the submission that we made, we had a home inspector and general contractor do a full inspection of the house in December. The cracking of the foundation is bad, and it's been that way for a long time. So because of that, the framing has settled. The chimney needs to be completely demolished and is a safety hazard. The drywall, the flooring, the roof, everything in that house is settled over time because that's been the case now for what, 50 or 55 years. So, you know, not so much a matter of it not being kept up. I think that's probably been true in the last couple of years because it's not inhabitable for zoning reasons, not just because of the status of the building, and that'll happen to any building, even a pretty solid building. You can't just leave empty for years. But really, the issues with this house have existed a long time. The report says that there are unsecured piers, there are rotted joists and beams, the concrete floors have settled, and that there are no visible anchor bolts. That's pretty bad from a structural standpoint. It's not even discernible if you could save that house unless you do excavation to look at the foundation. And you can see in the pictures even, those cracks pretty much go all the way around. Go ahead. Sorry. I thought somebody said something. Maybe it's just the air conditioning. I apologize. The exterior of the house, the report says the siding, the soffit, the fascia need a lot of repairs. The doors, the deck, the gutter system all has to be redone. The deck's unsound. The plumbing is a combination of plastic, copper, and galvanized piping that the inspector says isn't really suitable for potable water. The electrical system, as you would probably imagine, is outdated. The roof and the flashings are near the end of their lifespan, even if the structure under them was sound. The entire kitchen needs to be completely gutted. All the bathrooms need to be completely gutted and redone. All the flooring has to come out and be redone. All the drywall's shot. There are termites. There's mold. So basically, literally everything in this house pretty much would have to go and be replaced. And at that point, are you preserving a 1940s house, or are you basically rebuilding a replica of a 1940s house? Because I think that's what it would come down to. Even if you could stack that replica on top of the existing foundation, which I think is doubtful. So it's, I know that the board is aware that there was a request before this body for a demo permit a couple of years ago. I think that situation was very different. There was not a professional inspection report at the time. That was a potential contract purchaser who came in and said, well, I think I could probably save that house, but I don't really want to. I'd rather tear it down. And I don't know. It's hard for me to blame the board for deciding it shouldn't be demolished when they're being told it didn't have to be demolished. But I'm here today to tell you that it does. And I know that the board is aware, that there has been a zoning issue with this property, not to get into too many details about that, but it cannot be inhabited as a residence. It's zoned residential, so the ability to use it for a commercial use is also very limited. The landowners tried to think of other ways to solve this problem. There was a nonprofit that had said they were interested in the property. They thought maybe they could use both houses. After months, they said, we can't finance it. That old house is a tear down, and didn't proceed with the contract. We tried to talk to investors, brokers, anybody that we thought maybe could figure out a way to repurpose this property. And the problem even with doing a rezoning to commercial is that there's no parking there. And the building's not very well suited to a commercial use, even if it was solid as a rock, which it is certainly not. So, honestly, the landowner even considered, could you connect the two buildings? Could you solve the zoning problem by making these two houses into one big, awkward, strange house, but at least you could sell it. At least somebody could finance it and you could sell it and they could do what they wanted with it. And to be perfectly candid with the board, I went to the property with Steve Bean and we looked at it. Well, where could you connect them? Could you put it here? Could you put it there? Part of the problem is that the level of pain is higher than it was historically. So the water drains off the road crown and kind of comes right down between those two structures through to the side yard. So to put a structure over that would be really tricky. And we looked at the old house and I just said, does it make sense? Does it make sense to connect these two when this house basically is barely standing up? So I will tell you that the landowner really did try to find other ways to deal with this, but I think fundamentally the house is in very bad shape because of things that happened decades ago, really. Regardless of whether or not anybody had been, in the house and running the AC and there wasn't mold and things like that. There's some pretty significant structural problems with it. But I think, even more to the point, is it viable to spend the money to essentially rebuild the entire house when there's no legal viable use of it? There's number one, does it make sense? But also number two, how do you finance something like that if you can't make a case that you're adding value to the property by doing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work, because it's basically a garden folly at the end of the day. It's something that you could look at, but there's really not anything you can really do with it. So that's also challenging. But I am not here to tell the board that we need a demolition to solve a zoning dispute with the town that's gone on a really long time. That's not the case. As I think you may know, this is presently in a circuit court appeal. And I will tell you, if we had a trial tomorrow and we won that circuit court appeal and the court said, you can live in that house, it would still have to be torn down. This is not about trying to solve the zoning problem. The house is just, unfortunately, I can see why it sort of a distance, you can see that it could theoretically be charming. I think it's really more charming than historic. But even that's really kind of theoretical, because when you get up close to it, you realize it's just really past to the point where it has any usefulness or ability to be preserved. So I would be very happy to answer any questions. I appreciate your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Rosati. Any initial questions or any follow-up from staff? Okay, sorry, before it, do you have anything?
Well, there's a lot here to take in.
Okay. My initial question is just, I guess, going through the the previous demolition permit. Emily, that was 2 years ago? I think. And just to restate what Ms. Rosati said, they had applied for a zoning permit or a demolition permit. At the time, he had declined to provide the inspection that we would typically see with such structures because he had had an intent to redevelop the use or redevelop the property. That was denied by the ARB. It was appealed to the town council. The town council ultimately upheld the ARB decision, and then it went back. And then, as Ms. Rosati mentioned, it was in tandem with the court order. So did I state that correctly, the order of events? Okay. And then, Michelle, I do want to ask, the issue with the zoning is not this house, it's the occupancy of the other house. That was the impetus of the zoning issue, correct?
It's one lot.
Okay.
It's one lot, and it's not big enough to be subdivided. And there was a question as to whether the 1980s era house had gotten permits. There was clearly evidence in the minutes of the board meeting that the board approved that house, but the permit was just, couldn't be found. Eventually, the permit did turn up, actually. The county had it. Turned out the town did too. So it was really a question of, had it been properly approved at the time it was done in the 80s. But here's one thing I didn't say, and it is in the written materials that I think is important to consider, is the zoning administrator testified at the last hearing that she can't lawfully issue building permits for this house. So
until the zoning issue is resolved. Now, there was also the option to tear down the 80s house and resolve the zoning issue, correct? That would have resolved the zoning problem?
yes.
Okay.
And then we'd be back here asking for demolition of the 40s house, because it just, I think that there maybe was a time where some people believed that it was really just a means to an end.
Okay.
Right? Like, I'll tear down the one that doesn't appear to be worth as much, and then problem solved. The house is just, it's beyond that.
Understood. I just wanted to clarify that the impetus of the pending lawsuit had more to do with the 80s house and how that permitting process than the house in question. I just wanted to state that for the record. And it was the election of the owner of the two structures. This was considered less viable. Is that a fair statement? If the choice between demolishing the two?
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
The applicant 2 years ago, before this body, was a contract purchaser.
Okay.
So that contract purchaser apparently believed that both of those houses were viable, but preferred to demolish the 1940s house. That was really his position.
Okay. I have more questions. If any other questions come up by the board in the meantime? Okay. The assessment that was done, the pictures that are in the packet are of the previous demolition request. Are there any updated photographs that are more recent of the exterior or the interior?
There are.
Okay.
There were some photographs taken in December, and what I had are print copies.
Okay.
They were not nearly as clear or visible. They were very dark.
Okay.
And when I went back and looked at the pictures from 21, I thought, well, these are actually really good pictures. You can really see things in them.
Gotcha.
So I thought, I'm going to resubmit those pictures because I think you can just see them much better. I was in the house in December, although I didn't go in the basement. I didn't go into every room. Candidly, I would not have felt safe doing it. Gotcha. So, but I do think that it certainly hasn't gotten better since those pictures were taken.
And then I guess part of it too is these pictures in the packet do not include the exterior. They only include the interior, so that if there were pictures that were available of the exterior, I think that would be helpful to have.
Okay.
So, because part of the claim is that the exterior is also of substandard. We do have a demolition by neglect ordinance, and I think you did touch on that. Could you expand a little bit more on why the property, because the zoning issue is probably within the last 2 years, but a lot of the condition predates that vacancy of the property. Is there any more you can share? I know there was a fire there. There's a fire that was shown in the photographs. Was there any other
Evidence
reason?
of fire damage.
Evidence of fire damage is pretty clear. Is there any other reason why the property was allowed to deteriorate to the condition that it is today?
You know, I would say this, a lot of the really major damage is really secondary to the settling and the foundation problem. That I think just eventually time was going to catch up with it. Because that's what's driving the settling of the floors, the joists, the roof, the walls, everything's kind of coming down with it. So in theory, neglect it could be mold, it could be drywall, it could be things that you could sort of fix. To me, neglect are things that affect mostly surface materials, finished materials, unless it really goes on for a very long time. I would submit to the board that really the big driver and the problems here is this foundation damage that's been cooking for 50 years. Because kind of everything's come down with it, and, you know, the chimney's ready to come down. That's really the bigger problem. Of course, it's true that, you know, now and, you know, since these events, I think the zoning administrator said earlier that, you know, this all started in 2019. I mean, this has been going on for a few years now. And it is true that since the zoning determination was issued, that the two houses weren't permissible and that you couldn't pull building permits or occupancy permits for both of them, I think that has been a driver of vacancy because, you know, we've got this situation where I don't know that I would want someone living in the 1980s house with this dangerous 1940s house next to it. 40s house is not inhabitable. I mean, it had been tenanted up until, I want to say 2020, the beginning of, you know, so people were living in it to that point. I'm not saying it was the Taj Mahal, but it was at a level that people were willing to rent it and live in it. So to the extent to which it's not livable now, that's basically happened since then. Except that the structural damage, I think, was something that had been just kind of a slow burn for many years.
Okay. On the question of Baker Bean, thank you for the summary on that. We did have one of the staff employees do some history on that. The Baker side, I can appreciate that there's a question about the ownership at the time. I think the Bean designation had to do with the fact that Mrs. Bean was the mayor at some point. So I believe that's probably the reference to the Bean family and the history that they have with the town. So that'll be the only clarification, is that there is a person of note that had lived at the house for a period of time. When you and I had spoken last fall, you had talked about, and this is not a requirement of any decision about the demolition permit, but that they considered maybe perhaps some alternative redevelopment of the site that might have an opportunity to recapture their architectural style. Is there still an opportunity, you think, there with any redevelopment of the site?
I think probably not by these landowners.
Okay.
You know, I like to, candidly, they've been paying the bills, paying the taxes, paying the mortgage on this property when it can't be rented and they can't sell it because it's really not sellable right now with the zoning problem that it has. You know, what a future owner would do, I couldn't say.
Okay. Obviously, the ARB has the ability to review those. Okay. And then I had a question about the rezoning. Did we stop short of doing the rezoning of the property? I can't remember. You stopped short of doing that? Okay, so it still is residential. Okay. Thank you, committee members. That's all I have for now. Any other follow-up questions?
The contractor inspector's report lists that there's cracks in the wall, in the foundation wall, but he also notes that it's a semi-block wall, and that's evident with some of these photos, but it looks like there's a arch coating, like a cementitious coating on top. Is the cracking, do they actually know, is the cracking in the parge coating, or is it actually within the mortar joints of the CMU block wall itself?
I understood they were in the wall itself, because what he said was that it's not even clear that it could be fixed to the point where you could rebuild a house on top of it without doing excavation. So I take that to mean that he has evaluated that and has concluded that it's structural. And it wouldn't be settling as a secondary result of foundation damage if it was just the parch coating. For all I know, that coating may have been put on,
Well, yeah,
afterwards.
Unfortunately, right? I mean, I think you know the house better than I do. We have these interior shots, so I have no reference. As to, it seems like they're kind of focusing on the worst cases, right? And so I have no context of where spatially or in plan where this is occurring, and I don't know, if the house is settling as a whole or if there's differential settlement. Yes, as water gets in here, it's a block wall, right? You don't do a lot of CMU block walls and foundations anymore. But water has a way of getting in. But I am kind of surprised looking at the slab. It looks relatively, free of water. But again, right? It's a picture. It's a snapshot in time.
That's right. And I think, as I said, everyone seems to believe that this damage happened when they blasted down Jefferson in the 70s.
And this has been occupied. This was basically occupied from the 70s up to 2020.
It was occupied by Mrs. Bean for a number of years. And when the 80s house was built, that house was built because Steve came back to live to take care of her. And unfortunately, within just, I think, a few months of him actually finishing the house, she passed away. But I believe that it's essentially been lived in since up until, after the zoning determination, right? Because there were tenants in it when that happened.
It was right up to, they requested a zoning determination approximately October of 2019, and they had tenants in the space up until that point, if not a couple months after that determination was issued.
I will say for reference, Ben, on packet page 48, and on page 48, 49, 50, 51, this photograph here, that is the front wall.
Okay.
When we did do a site visit last time, that was the front wall, and the same explanation was given, was that due to the blasting in the front, there was significant damage at the time. And this was pointed to as the result of that.
Okay.
Kind of coming through, I guess they did a skim coat. Of the mortar, and that was the additional settling that was there. So, Michelle, I'm pointing to the.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at the moment? So, just for full disclosure, I work with Ms. Rosati on cases up in Loudoun County. That has no bearing on our meeting this evening, although I tend to refer to you as Michelle because I know you on a professional level. So, Michelle, our typical practice has been to have the first presentation of the application. The board members, I think myself, and Stacy are the only ones. Were you here for this one? There's a few new members that have not had the benefit of a site tour. We typically, the second meeting before the regular meeting, will schedule a site visit, and then typically we render a decision at that second meeting. So if with the committee's indulgence, I would recommend we follow the sort of the protocol. Emily did mention you had some concerns about accessibility into the house. That's fine as well. If there's ability to at least look in the doors to be able to sort of verify the condition. And I don't believe the basement ones have changed much either. If there is some benefit to having if there's any inspector photographs that are viable, if you could provide those. I'm sorry, let me first check with the committee. Are we comfortable with sending it to a site visit, a second meeting? Okay. That being said, if we could get the additional photographs, Emily, if we wouldn't mind in the next iteration, if we could have just a one-paragraph summary of the previous decision by the ARB and the council. And then if we could have the exterior photographs for the record as well, I think that would be helpful. Okay, pictures of the exterior, summary of the previous decisions, that's what I have. Any other supplemental information that would benefit the committee?
Chairman,
Yes.
may I clarify?
Sure.
One paragraph summary of decisions made at the ARB level as well as the town council level because it was previously appealed to the council,
Correct, just something for the record. And
The minutes attached to that.
the
as
minutes
well?
actually might be even easier if you could just make a reference to that and report. We've attached the minutes of the previous
Okay,
board and council decisions. I think that would be helpful for the record.
thank you.
And would validate the statements tonight that the previous owner had offered to rehabilitate it, but had declined to provide the requisite studies, which you have provided tonight. So,
Right. Actually, it was a contract purchaser.
a contract purchaser, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's right.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
If I
ma'am.
may? I did want to point out, and I put this in a footnote in our submission. I had some conversations with the town about Town Code Section 581612B, which tracks the Virginia Code 15.22306, which is what I would call a sort of an override provision to the authority of the ARB. The requirement, so in other words, you're entitled to demolish without getting an approval from the ARB if the owner or applicant has applied to the town council for such a right. The owner has, for the period of time set forth in the schedule contained in 15.22306, which is a year under these circumstances, at a price reasonably related to its fair market value, made a bona fide offer to sell to someone who gave reasonable assurance that they would preserve and restore the historic resource, and then there's no bona fide contract for that buyer to buy it at the end of the day. We actually believe all of these requirements have been met. Back in 2021, there was a request to the town to demolish it, which was denied. It was offered at fair market value to carry to full term last spring. Those discussions started in very early spring. They went all spring, all summer, into the fall, until which point carried to full term said, we can't finance it and the house isn't viable. So we actually think that this has been satisfied. The town's attorney said, we're not sure what the process would be for you to, because I said, I'm not sure that's proper to raise to the ARB, because I'm not sure it's their jurisdiction to say whether that's been met or not. And I am not sure that it's properly before you, but I didn't want to not raise it. So,
The zoning administrator did bring to my attention that you had had that discussion. I would defer to them to that. The only commentary I would have is, having a background as a zoning administrator, was that it would have required formal notice to the board that, hey, we are beginning the clock. This is the sale price that is being offered at, and make it clear that that was the intent to exercise your rights under that provision. And I don't know that that has been the case. I understand that provision, but I know the other, did the other demolition permit, Emily, do you remember, did they try to exercise, has anyone else tried to exercise that right under the provision, do we know?
That's my knowledge.
Okay. Okay, other than just making reference to the provision, okay. Okay, so, again, I would defer to the zoning administrator on that for official determination, but that would be my reading of it, that we would have had to have had. It's not enough for the council to have denied the permit. We would have had to have had formal notice that you were seeking relief under that provision, which I think is the first part. The applicant has applied to the town council for such right. That's what I interpret that to mean. You're formally requesting that is your, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I hear you.
Yeah, so.
I hear you. My 2 cents on that, for what it's worth, would be, There were a lot more discussions with the town about carried to full term. We authorized the council to move forward with a zoning text amendment and rezoning for that purpose, and that process actually did proceed for a number of months until it was discontinued. So there's more under the hood on that. I don't know that we need to reach that. I just didn't want to not raise this. I don't know that it's really your decision, but
No, thank you for pointing that out. And I will say to the other committee members, there is a relief under the state code that if alternative to this process. And I thank you for letting me know that. Okay, so the proper form of this, if we wanted to defer to the June meeting and then hold a site visit, how did we do this last time? I can't remember.
Do you want to defer all the way to a June meeting, or do you want to just defer to May?
Oh, I'm sorry, a month ahead of time. Sorry, Michelle, I
I
didn't
got
make me there. May.
Can we schedule tonight while we're all here together, go ahead and schedule the site visit, and then let's do a motion for deferral.
Okay, deferral, work session, we call it 6 o'clock would it be a work session to go visit the site?
That or special meeting?
Okay. Any questions about that? It would be a 6 o'clock meeting. We
Go
would
here first and then.
open the meeting, walk across the street toward the site, come back, and then we'd hold our regularly scheduled meeting at 7, and the item would be on the agenda for a decision.
That date is May 17th.
May 17th, okay?
Six or
6:30.
Okay. No issues with daylight?
No.
Last time we had to pay attention to daylight, so.
I think 6:30 is
6:30, okay. Sorry, let me get my, thank you for coming and presenting tonight. We do appreciate the background and the presentation and the thought put into the application.
I would suggest that maybe safety hats and masks would be a good idea.
Okay,
I understand the zoning administrator is actually advising that we don't go into the house. Having been there in December, I get that, I agree, but I want to make sure that you see what you think you need to see.
Okay.
But it is hazardous.
okay. I will let the committee members decide on their own if they wish to take the risk or not. Okay, let me find a motion. Do we have a zoning permit number yet? That's okay, I'll just go ahead and make the motion. I move that the ARB defer consideration of the demolition application request for 6712 Jefferson Street until the May regularly scheduled ARB meeting. I further move that the ARB schedule a work session at 6:30 on the same date to conduct a site visit of the property. Motion made, second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion, clarification? No? Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes with 2 members absent for the vote. Thank you so much. Will you be here next month as well? I will. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, zoning permit 2023-0411, fence application 14994 Gossam Manor Place. Do we have an applicant here this evening? No? Okay.
No, we don't. Does
Thanks,
that,
Thomas.
So procedurally, that means,
You can still have it.
so I can still,
Yeah, go for it.
okay. I believe I have enough information. I think the simplicity of the application,
Okay.
I can represent it. So this particular address, for context, it's in the Sherwood Forest Homeowners Association. If you were going up Fayette Street, it's on the northeast corner. So we're working with 68 to 69 feet of fence along public right-of-way, and that's what we're dealing with. This starts on packet page 81 for your reference. What you have here is a diagram of the lot, or plat of the lot, with the highlighted in yellow the fence border. On On the left side, that is what would face the public right-of-way on Fayette Street. It's a privacy fence. It meets the zoning ordinance of the 6-foot height requirement for fences. The next couple of packet pages detail the cap options, colors, and design style. Applicant circled Lakeland for design style. It'll be white picket with option E for the cap. For context, this neighborhood as well, if you go up north on Fayette Street, there are other fences that have, it's black metal for some. There is one on 15001 Gotham Manor, which is on the southeast side of Fayette Street, that does have a white picket fence.
One of the things that I think you and I, Thomas, you and I talked about today, one of the things that will be helpful for future applications, if we can have a photograph of sort of the area that's in question to help
Yes,
us put it in
certainly.
context. Okay. Committee members, any questions about this? If you go out straight out Fayette, go down this way, it's the first house on your right as you move into Gotham Manor Place, correct?
Yes.
The only other question I had was, is this going to be a white picket fence against the black metal fence to its neighbor behind it?
I'm not sure on that
Okay,
one.
that probably is. I don't think there's a
Way-
bearing on it. I just,
yeah.
it would be unfortunate to have those two fence styles right up against each other.
In my conversations with the contractor, he wanted to build obviously on their property, so that might be the potential clash.
Okay. But we do have a precedent for this fence style within the neighborhood, okay?
Yes.
And it is permissible by our design standards, okay? And it is to the rear of I think our standard is to the rear of the property line, and then the HOA also is approved,
Yes, and we have a documentation of that approval.
okay, which is in the packet, okay? Any other questions, comments before we take a motion? Okay. Anyone would like to make a motion? Should be on packet page 75.
I can do it.
Okay,
I move the board approve the COA for ZP 2023-4-0411 as presented for the fence addition at 14994 Gotham Manor Place.
moved, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously with 2 members absent for the vote.
Great.
Thank you to the applicant that's not here.
Moving to the next application.
Sir.
This one involves building a porch on 6751 Fayette Street. This particular house faces the lot where St. Paul's Episcopal is on Fayette Street. So south of Washington Street. In light of what you just told me, Chairman, I have pictures of the front of the house as provided by the applicant, which I will pass out to you.
Yeah, please do.
And the applicant, Joseph Moore, is here also to describe the process and answer any questions for you.
Good evening, Mr. Moore. You're welcome to come and address the ARB or just wait for our discussions. Up to you.
I don't know how this works. I'll let y'all do your thing.
Do you have any other presentation after you pass out the photographs?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, if you could just, we have the photographs of the front.
Sure, I took
If you
that
could-
this afternoon.
Great. If you don't mind walking us through a general description of what it is you're trying to do and,
So, I submitted, hired an architect to draw the plans that
Okay.
should be in the packet. But basically, it is a 24-foot wide covered porch
okay?
with stairs on both sides. 24-foot wide, 8-foot deep. It's basically, it would be similar to like what's on Winterham, the north facing with the hip rafters that, I don't know how to describe it. It looks like, it will look like Cupcake House.
Correct. So you have,
Currently a brick stoop there,
mhm.
that would be demolished, and then it would be replaced with the structure. What I'm looking at doing is, it would be wood structure with like Trex railing, maintenance, like low maintenance railing, but the rest of it would be wood. As far as the aesthetics, I didn't know I had to do this first, so I went down to the county, and they said I'd come here first.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. But the aesthetics, I mean, you tell me what it has to look like. I just need the permission to start. Like, I can't take the footers or anything like that.
Okay.
So.
Thank you for that. Any initial board questions? No? Okay. If I understand it correctly, I see what you're saying. I think the other one, the gray house right here on Washington Street, is sort of three-dimensional. The roof, you'll have the awning in the front, you'll have the two pitches on the side. Trim, asphalt shingles to match the current, okay. 4x4 posts, 6x6 uprights, do you know which one you're gonna do?
It'll be 6x6 posts going
Okay.
up, vinyl wrap.
Vinyl wrap, white vinyl to match the house, okay. Below the porch, between the footers and the bottom of the porch, what type of,
So that can be whatever y'all want it to be.
Okay.
Like, I got some of the standards, which is like white, it can be white siding to match the house, or whatever is.
What would-
It says no paneling, I think, but I don't even know what paneling is.
okay.
But y'all tell me what,
We're looking for what you want to do, what's the most aesthetic, lattice work,
I don't like, I would rather have
Okay.
it covered, I don't like the lattice, because if you drive around town, I don't like
Okay.
the lattice cover things on
Mhm.
porches like on Main Street.
mhm,
I would rather close it in
okay,
and have it, it could be siding that matches the house,
Okay.
or a white painted finished product. But that's what I'm saying, for that stuff, y'all tell me what it has to be and I'll do it. Because I read the suggestions or requirements or materials, but it's kind of a little bit vague, like,
I think we see a little bit of both. Like we've seen lattice, we've seen the horizontal sort of slats that do that. We've seen some that are brick. You know, they bring out the foundation of the brick. So, Thomas, Emily, did any recommendations on a screening material below the porch?
Based on a previous front porch application that we did in Green Hill Crossing several years back, I would recommend it either be the siding material that matches the house, or if willing, even if it's that, I forget what they call it, but the fake brick product, whatever other materials on the house. I'm not familiar with the front of your house, if it's siding and brick or just siding.
Brick.
we're up to that.
Okay. I hear that.
It would brick up, like 4 foot up.
I think the white siding would be an appropriate material.
Be inappropriate?
Appropriate.
Yeah, they say inappropriate.
appropriate. Not inappropriate. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Would you want to keep, I assume, is the ceiling going to be open of it, or is it going to be, you're going to have like a wainscoting ceiling? Okay. So you would need to probably get rid of that architectural feature?
Yeah, that's all part of that, and also obviously the shrubbery and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. And be right up to the sidewalk. Okay. So just to check with the committee, any concerns about the roofing materials, asphalt shingles to match? None? Okay. 6x6 uprights, vinyl wrap to match the house. It's fine. Is that description in the material already? Okay. And then recommendations on the porch screening below the decking. I'm sorry, any question about the decking material itself? Applicant's election? Okay. And then the screening was either a similar siding material to enclose it, or a faux brick to match the foundation. I think we would leave that to you to decide.
I would say siding right now.
Okay, well, cost, yeah.
Well,
That's it.
but also, you don't know what it's.
Well, faux brick, you would have to put the cinder block and then put the faux siding on it, so, okay. Okay, do we feel like that's enough? Would you prefer to see the revised materials before we make a decision, or is it enough to put it as part of the motion? Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Any other feedback? Okay. I can attempt to make a motion for it. Page 92. you quick with the numbers tonight.
I know.
I like that. Marchant, get out of here, right? Okay. I move that the board approve COA ZP 2023-0413 as presented for the porch addition at 6751 Fayette Street, subject to the following conditions. One, that the porch shingles match the main structure, that the uprights are wrapped in a vinyl material that match the siding and fascia of the house, and that the screening of the porch match the, or be of similar material to the siding on the house. Okay. Can I get a second?
A second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Any questions about what we're asking or recommending? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, and that motion will pass with 2 members absent for the votes. Thank you for waiting through those other applications. Staff will get you the application, and then you get your get out of jail free card at the county. Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay. Committee, if I could take like a 2-second break, real quick, get right back. 5-minute recess, and then we'll take up. Thank you for waiting. We'll get started on the kitty cat. 5-minute recess. Sure. Thank you for waiting. Appreciate it. Okay, we are back in session. Agenda item 4, Kitty Academy elevations, 6515 Crossroads Boulevard. Mr. Thomas, if you could tee this up for us, and I believe we
Yes.
have the applicant here to present as well.
Definitely.
Okay.
So for site location, despite all the building that has been going on at Crossroads Village Center, there are still 2 unoccupied pad sites. This application is for a site plan that will occupy one of them. Location-wise, I gave you a piece of paper. It's just west of the Pulte Townhomes that are being built. And it's situated behind Chick-fil-A and Fauquier Bank and the entrance ramp onto Interstate 66 from James Madison Highway.
So that's the entrance ramp. That's CVS. That's Chick-fil-A,
Yep.
and that's where Lidl's supposed to go? Okay, cool. Thanks.
And this is a child daycare center, and we have physical materials or material samples that you can look at and blown up images of the elevations if you'd like to come down here and look.
Okay, anyone will look at that before the applicant makes their presentation?
Is there any renderings?
No, just these.
Okay, sir, do you have a presentation?
Sure. My name is Sam Baker with Baker Associates Architects, 673 High Street, Suite 204, Worthington, Ohio. We have been working on child daycare for probably the past 15 years. We've designed over 100 of them for Kitty Academy and other institutions around the country. This facility is a 2-story facility. It will house or have in it approximately 169 students with approximately 23 staff members. That is if it's fully occupied. Most of the Kitty Academies usually run about 80% occupancy because of attrition, because kids are sick, because people are moving, whatever. So this one has the exact same materials that, to my understanding, was previously approved for the development by the developer that he has come through. We're using the exact same materials and the exact same pallet board that we were given and has been approved. Within our packet, we supplied the approved colors and materials, and then with the materials board that we put together, it's identical to what's there. The style of the architecture is identical to the buildings. This is a 2-story building because the site is so small. In order to get 10,000 square feet, which is a typical size of the Kitty Academy on the site, we had to go to a 2-story design. So I don't know if you have any questions or anything I can answer for you now.
Committee members, before we get started?
The one thing that I had, just looking at the elevations and kind of referring it back to, I guess it's the last page on the packet where it actually shows kind of like a template or, the standards of colors and things like that. It almost looks like the Kitty Academy is going to be an inverse of that, where it seems like the vast majority of it's going to be that darker gray color, and then the pieces that kind of jut out from the building will be the white color.
Would be the cobblestone.
Yeah, is that
Is the color.
that's
The timber bark is the darker.
yeah, okay.
There wasn't a requirement for percentage or anything on the building. We tried to use the horizontal material, which was the cobblestone, and keep it that way. It wasn't that we were trying to have it a certain color or reverse it. We were trying to go with the board and batten, which is the darker timber bark color. And since it was the vertical siding, the board and batten, we used the timber bark. We can always reverse that, but my understanding was they wanted the board and batten to be the darker color, and the ones that were the horizontal siding or lap siding to be the cobblestone.
Yeah, and then I think then a lot of those verticals then will parallel the slate gray standing seam roof. So I mean,
Right.
it's going to be a great. I don't know. I'm going to use this loosely here, but it might look like a gray blob, and that's why I was asking for renderings, just so I can kind of contextualize what it looks like.
Yeah, the color renderings would be helpful. And then, so the awnings would be of a similar material to what's out there.
The red,
Okay.
colonial red.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the windows, right here, they look like a single pane or double pane.
No, they're double pane storefront,
Okay.
which is aluminum
Okay.
sections.
So,
And it'll be the bronze color, so the darker bronze.
okay. Did you have any initial questions? Okay. So I'm going to put this delicately. Good job incorporating a lot of the elements, but the building seems, all of our standalone buildings out there are of not, the thematic that's out there is for the inline retail. Most of the standalone vendor occupants out there have had a similar color palette, but had a more remarkable elevations, I guess you could say. I see the challenges of going two-story. It seems like it's a challenge to have to use the storefront architecture to raise it to a, so the board and batten doesn't seem as appropriate. It seems like a lot of board and batten. At that scale, it seems like an overuse of that, so,
It is, and like I said, we could reverse those
okay.
and do the cobblestone as the main section, which would be the lap siding, and the elements that protrude or stick out be the board and batten.
I guess I'm even thinking too, with all the, what do you call it? The peaks, it's a lot going on. And you said you've designed 100? Okay. So I assume you took,
Every single one is different, every single one has a different element.
I'm going to put this out for the committee. We don't have it all here today, but I don't know how much it would render it. But I would think if there's another type style that maybe doesn't, again, I appreciate you trying to match the type style, and I believe that's the owner's direction. But I don't know that this is the most appropriate material for a two-story building. And if there is another prototype that you have that would fit more in the character with what's around it, you have the CVS, you have the more bungalow style of the Fauquier Bank, which is now the Virginia National Bank. You have the Lidl that's been approved that had a similar color palette but had different materials. Popeyes, Taco Bell, they all had a spin on the color palette but had their own distinctive architecture. If it's with the consensus, I would almost ask if there's another prototype that you would feel comfortable with. I hate for you to go back to the drawing board, but do I get a consensus from the committee members that maybe a different two-story option might be better? Okay. How do you feel about that suggestion? So I know you're delicate given the fact that you have an owner that you're dealing with, but
They won't be excited about it.
okay.
They aren't, let me kind of rephrase that, they aren't tied to the design.
Okay.
We were given the design by the developer.
Okay.
Who said.
Go make it
"You
work."
have to- You have to match this.
Okay.
which we did.
Yep. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and to come back with something else, I can do that definitely. And have different colors or different materials. I don't want to stray too far from the design of the center, because I don't want something to stick out.
And I wouldn't suggest that either. That's why I was giving you the examples of some of the other buildings. If you could take a look at what's in that corner, I think you get a variation of the styles that might help you lend itself to that, whether it be the hardy plank siding, maybe not as many, I want to call them, they're not parapets, what are they called?
Peaks.
Peaks, more dormer style on the front, not having to have the same four-sided architecture, but not having I'm not an architect by trade.
That's okay.
I'm tearing up the language, but I think that would be probably a more compatible and give some of the distinction for the design and still blend with that. Being tucked away, it's not as prominent as on Washington Street. You'll still see it from the on-ramp, so I think paying homage to that. So that would be my recommendation, two-story structure, maybe look at the horizontal for the majority of the building, less use of the peaks. Look at some of the other window styles if you feel that's more palatable. Same building footprint. Whether you want to add articulation. I'm just thinking if you've had so many other designs, I have to believe there's something that you've seen before that may match. There's another on the other side of Home Depot. I don't know if that's your competition or not, but on the other side of Walmart, between Walmart,
and Home Depot.
Primrose, they have, similar to Fauquier Bank, they have, my vocabulary escapes me. They have the two peaks on the front, but they're offset. I think that's a good example. They have a hip roof. I think they still have a lot of the common elements I think that you have here, but not so much use of the board and batten, not so much use of the peaks.
Just to let you know, the roof is a well that we are using to hide all the HVAC equipment.
Like they did out there. Okay.
So that sort of facade around the perimeter with the standing seam metal roof, that well behind it is between 4 and 6 feet deep. So all the HVAC equipment sits on that roof. So there's no condensers or anything on the ground, which helps, first of all, space, but also just the kids can't get to it. They can't be stolen, damaged or anything.
So I will say, when this design was done, I did not pick up on that, and when it was being built, I noticed from the side that it was not a true peaked roof. It was, I call it like a parapet, but it ends to put behind it, which I thought was a good feature. Half truss, so I didn't pick up on it.
That's okay.
Staff, any feedback on what was just discussed? Good, the bad?
No, I think you make valid points for
Okay.
how we evaluate what we have existing.
We can get you elevations of the other standalone buildings on the property, the Lidl, and the other two to try to match. Also, too, we would have the other benefit of having more of the board members here next month. I'm not sure how quick a timetable that you're on.
I can get it done by next month.
Okay. If you wanted to preview with the staff, obviously, we'll trust the staff to give you some initial feedback on that if it would be helpful. How many members, are we okay with this?
Yeah,
direction?
I think just kind of almost switching, inverting the elevations, going from what is the vertical batten to a horizontal will help change it, because the profile of a lot of those buildings over there is very low, right? And so having that horizontal, distinction helps showcase that low profile. And then when you have a smaller building, what do you do when you try to make it tall? You accentuate the verticals, right? And so you're essentially doing that with the board and batten.
So if you please let the owners know, thank you for making the effort. I imagine I might be getting a phone call, but so,
No, you might get one from the developer. I'm not sure.
oh, okay, I got you. I would hope Kitty Academy might see some utility in this.
They They do.
Okay.
They want all their buildings to be attractive, have curb appeal,
Okay.
fit into the community.
Gotcha.
They don't want to be sort of, the unusual building that even though from the standpoint, oh, we know exactly what that building is, sometimes it's not beneficial to them. They want to definitely fit into the community.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other feedback or direction that you need from us?
No,
Okay. Thanks for waiting.
good to work with.
Yeah. Kudos, Thomas. Good job. Any other, the material board that you have in front of you, any feedback you need on those materials before we go back to the drawing board?
Not really.
And-
If we just reverse them out, I mean, we can use that same color palette.
Okay.
And, keep it. The only thing I didn't have on there were, the awning colors, which is that colonial red.
And that would be helpful too, if there's a possibility to get color renderings with the next submission, that would be very helpful. So, okay. So we would need a motion to defer to the May regularly scheduled meeting. So, okay.
What was the date?
Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I move that we move the zoning permit application for Kitty Academy Elevations, 6515 Crossroads Boulevard to the May 17th regularly scheduled meeting for discussion, further discussion, with the consideration of the amendments discussed this evening. Second?
I second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Any follow-up questions?
Oh, well, I do have one.
Yes, sir.
In terms of getting a building permit, do we have to have a certificate from you first before we apply to the county?
They'd bounce it back to us.
Okay. That's what my understanding was. I just wanted to make sure, because I will be asked that question. Can you submit?
Yeah, that's our nuance here. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. 2 members absent for the vote. Thank you very much, sir. Have safe travel where you're going back to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start compiling that. Thanks, Sam. We'll be in touch.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, old business. Mr. Thomas, any old business to go over?
Currently, no. Just in terms of, it's been 2 months since or how would I describe it? I'm trying to remember how Rob described it in Planning Commission. The items that were discussed on the last meeting involved passage of certain lighting items on the way to passing a site plan. The site plan's still under review for the Masonic Charitable Foundation.
Okay. I know they were out there doing some clearing and grading.
We're still reviewing past minutes too, just to do some
Gotcha.
final touches on the site plan.
Cool. Yes, ma'am.
Since I'm here tonight, I would love to give you more of a town manager old business update.
Great.
If you guys are amenable to it.
Objection?
So,
Go for it.
previously when I was staffing these ARB meetings, some of the projects that we worked on that are currently under development, Crossroads Village is clicking right along with all of the buildings going up. So that you guys are aware, they are meeting the Architectural Review Board decisions that were approved. So we have been keeping a close eye that those are the architectural elements that were approved. They are following through with that as we had discussed back in, I believe it was 2019 now. So it's been a long time coming. You will see that Popeyes is going up, and we have gotten some comments from the community about how it doesn't look like your normal Popeyes. So I do think that the board at the time did take a good effort to make sure that it was something that fit within our community, but also the development, and it didn't look like just a standard Popeyes or a standard fast food joint. So it has been exciting to see that one pop up. You'll see the orange gooseneck lighting, which you don't see everywhere else, is being installed. We do expect that Taco Bell will be starting here very soon. I think Thomas just issued them a grading permit. So Taco Bell is bringing in a separate contractor to build out their site, separate of the Crossroads Village Development contractor. So that's why that one has not started yet. And then you have the other multi-tenant buildings. A lot of them are coming to Thomas right now for sign applications. Again, they are meeting the standards that we approved in 2019 for the master sign plan. If there is any variation request, Thomas is reminding them of the master sign plan and working with them on that. So a lot of these tenants are down at the building department pulling their necessary building permits and starting to do interior work. So that will be coming online very soon. I have a meeting with VDOT on Friday to walk the street with them and look at the light and those improvements. That'll be a very big change for our community, to say the least. So it'll be interesting to see what the VDOT inspector has to say, if there's any additional improvements or work that needs to be done prior to releasing that permit. I'm sure it'll still be a couple weeks before the light is turned on. I am working with Chief so that we have more of a presence at the light when it does come on initially, and really help slow people down and they don't blow through it without realizing it. So that's Crossroads Village. And then another old business item that we worked on about a year ago was the demolition permit for the firehouse and the bungalow structure. As you've probably seen, there are signs up with the company's name. They are looking to demolish these two structures soon. I thought, based on some conversations I had with them at the beginning of the month, end of last month, that they already would have been down by now, but I'm a little surprised they haven't. I do expect that it'll be any day now that they come in and do the work and clean everything up. So again, we do not have any applications yet of what they want to put in place of those two structures, but as soon as something comes in, Thomas will bring it up for new business items. Other than that, just a general kind of maintenance update that I would give you is the town is looking into putting out an RFP for painting the exterior of all of our structures, to include getting some work done on our caboose. I know that the caboose is in desperate need of some TLC, some painting. It's not a sightly structure right now, so we are working on that process. We know that the overall contract is going to be above the spending limit that I can sign off on, so we are getting those quotes to do a comparison with contractors, and we'll bring them to the town council for their review. So those are kind of some ARB style updates that we have.
Emily, could you cover the status of the town hall signs?
Certainly. So we need to get updated quotes on the town hall signs for above the police department door and the town hall door. I do believe last time I got the quotes again that it's collectively over the amount that I'm authorized to sign off on, which is $10,000. So I will need to obtain additional quotes for that and present them to the council for a decision.
And we're able to include the lights with that as well.
Yes, that's correct.
And then corner of Fayette and Jefferson, that building's about to come down that we approved. a number
Yes,
of
we've
years ago.
approved a site plan for that, the two lots that would be built on
Okay.
that parcel.
Okay.
Working with the property owner on getting the demolition going.
Okay. That one was a condition that it could not come down until a site plan was approved.
Yes, this is the site plan.
And that is not a condition we have since required as part of a demo permit. So, okay, thank you. Anything else for old business?
I will add, I'm doing the first site inspection for the model homes for Pulte.
Okay.
Everything looks good for them so far. They're adhering to what was passed in the ARB.
And K-Hub is really selling homes for $900,000 at Robinson's Paradise? D.R. Horton?
Yes, starting.
Okay, okay,
900,000.
starting.
That's what the sign says.
Okay.
be determined if they sell.
Okay. That'll definitely raise my property value. So, just saying.
Your taxes.
Touche. Any new business, Thomas?
main new businesses, there have been a few properties that were bought and changed up in terms of the business that's operating them. We'll be getting some signed permits for those in the next month. Regarding Taco Bell, I have received new packet materials for minor changes in signage. I'll be working with them. We'll see if it comes up on this next month's ARB.
They want to revise the sign plan?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't look like, in terms of what the approval letters I've been sending them out, I think it's just general signage, not the specific architectural elevations. I think it's just signage.
Okay. Just generally like increase, more?
It looks like dimensions were an effort to meet the current zoning ordinance.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. Planning Commission updates. Do you have one since Rob's not here?
Let me check really quick. The main thing we talked about in Planning Commission 2 days ago was there were a couple minor comprehensive plan amendments that I introduced. We will be giving public notice soon for a public hearing for those amendments for next month's commission meeting.
Okay.
And then, apart from that, looks like that's pretty much it for Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Town Council updates. We did schedule for hearing the tax rate, which I believe is, my memory, 111, which is less than last year's tax rate. We were able to lower the tax rate. If you get a chance to listen to the presentations, Roberto and staff are doing a great job. We still have ARPA funds and other funds, profit monies available to fund some of our capital projects. We're moving forward on, is the sidewalk probably going to hit any benchmarks soon? Park sidewalk?
Yes, so with Park Sidewalk, we're hoping to have the site plan finalized in the next couple of months. Receiving it from the engineer, not the review of it.
Okay.
So once we receive it, then it'll go through our review process. So we have to work on a change order right now. We need to do another topographic survey because we are connecting up to an existing stormwater structure. And since we are doing that, the information we had was not quite the level of accuracy they needed. So we are having to do a change order.
So we're probably still looking now, probably through the fall for that. Okay. The Planning Commission is looking at the capital improvements program as well, which again, the priority at the moment being the site plan and development of the master plan for the town property. Also, finishing up the sidewalk. And there's also monies talking about sidewalk repair, streetlight repair, future sidewalks, and then also we'll be looking at next month or so, looking at or determining any follow-up that we want to do down at the park in the interim. So things should be happening soon. And then, yes.
I'm sorry to jump in and add real quick to that. One of the projects that is on our CIP is the Town Hall Master Plan. We have just received the final site plan approval for that, so we are good to really start moving with the council on it, on getting
Great.
funding assigned to it.
Awesome. Key to that is it improves parking, improves the public space, adds a turn lane on Jefferson Street. So that'll be good. Farmers market starts soon. 23rd. Okay. Great. And I feel like there's something else I'm missing on the council level. Special election, or we did appoint Alexander Bien? BNA? He will fill the term through November, and there'll be a special election to fill that seat in November. That's all I have. Thank you.
We also had the introduction of our.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we got a new face.
Alexandra.
Alexandra.
So she is our administrative assistant, deputy town clerk. She will eventually be taking over from these ARB meetings. So introduce yourselves to Alexandra, and you'll be seeing her a lot more.
Kim doesn't want to hang out with the cool kids anymore.
She said Marchant keeps the meetings.
For the sidewalk that goes down to the town park,
Yes,
is that hooking up to the portion that's right there at the Baptist church?
that's correct.
And then is that going to be the concrete with like the painted faux brick, or are we taking out the brick and continuing on that aesthetic?
So we updated our zoning ordinance to go with the stamped concrete look. So that is what we were going to put in for that connection. And then Marchant briefly touched on it with the CIP. We do have in the CIP sidewalk repairs. We have a lot of our brick sidewalks that are in need of some type of repair, whether it's very significant or not as significant. So we would be looking at working with council on a plan to do maintenance throughout the town and work to slowly replace our sidewalks so that they all become that stamped concrete.
Villages did it, looks good.
Villages did it, Crossroads just put theirs in, the
sorry, the
hotel
Crossroads,
put
yeah.
theirs in. So it'll be a little interesting. You'll walk down by, not Villages, you said Villages, it confused me. Van Meter, Robinson Village.
I was like, oh.
You'll walk through their development. So in the front of that, they have stamped concrete. Then you go back to brick, and then you'll go back to stamped concrete. So we will work over the coming years to get them all uniform again.
Great. Alexandra, welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you, ARB members. That is the last item we have on the agenda, I believe. Can we get a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second. Motion seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. 2 members absent for the vote. Good night, everybody. I don't need to do that for the end, but get used to it. We're adjourned. Thank you.